Hello guys, David Vose here, and it's a beautiful day in paradise on the Red Mesa. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I see clear skies. Well, no, there's a few little fluffy clouds here and there. It'll probably rain this evening, as it has been doing just about every night. But I hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. It is, I just said it's a beautiful day, but I got to tell you, it really feels like a good day. A lot of clarity, I feel accomplished today. No fears, no anxieties of any kind. My daughter's doing well. She's taking her, some exam today, so I prayed for her. She texted me this morning and said pray for her because she's going to be taking an exam, and I'm proud of her, and my dogs are happy. And Miss Chicken's kind of moseying around, picking up little pieces of bugs and stuff off the ground. She's happy. I'm building the porch, which is basically, I say a porch because probably for the first week or two it'll be a porch, but we're going to turn it into a house. And it's going to be neat. I'm real happy with the way it's going. I got sunflowers that are actually blooming. And I might even go up and take a little picture of that for you and stick it in right here. But guys, I don't know. I have nothing on my mind that I thought of beforehand to tell you. Although I guess there's a lot of things to talk about. Man, oh man, oh man. Lots of stuff. But I guess what I'll tell you to start with is that I've been wanting to tell you this little story, and I haven't had time because we've been doing some important issues. But it's hard to get everything crammed into 1 hour when you got a lot of things to say. One of the things that happened to me over it's been over a week now, I think. I was talking to the Lord and I was asking him about my dad. You guys know, any of you who've been watching me for very long know that I lost my whole family, Jehovah's Witnesses. Except my mother. Mom left the organization when that beard thing happened, and she never looked back. And my brothers no longer were Jehovah's Witnesses. I think they had quit going before that. But my sister wasn't Jehovah's Witnesses. Like, I had a lot of family, my immediate family, that weren't Jehovah's Witnesses. That it stumbled them, what happened. But we never were the same after that. But my dad ended up going back to Jehovah's Witnesses and sitting in the back of the hall. He didn't have to sit there very long. They reinstated him right away. I've told you a whole story of kind of the reason why I wrote letters to all the congregations and had kind of caused a stir and wanted a meeting. And it was years after they had disfellowshipped me. Years after I had this meeting. And all of it, actually, the reason I had the meeting, they didn't know it, but it's because my dad was trying to get back into the Jehovah's Witnesses. He was trying to get reinstated. And I felt, after watching him for some years, that that's what he was meant to be or do. I don't think anyone could have ever changed his mind about the religion. He still was brainwashed. He still believed in it. Even though he was stumbled and wasn't a Jehovah's Witness for some years and didn't know what to do. But, he eventually decided to go back, and I felt like they needed to acknowledge that they were wrong about that beard and that they should accept my dad back and stuff. But after my dad was reinstated, I think it was the same day or thereabouts, they had this big convention that year. And the guy that disfellowshipped me, the president of AT&T, the same man who disfellowshipped my father, got up at the convention and gave this public sermon talk to the whole thousands of people present, saying that they were wrong, that you could have a beard. Because, see, I'd had the representative of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society in that meeting, and I pressed them, and they came to a place with the representative of the Watchtower there where and it was on record. See, they're big about records and having things written down. And so it was, I guess it came to a head and they had to make some kind of decision. Now, I know recently they've said you can wear beards, but they kind of said this some years ago at this convention. It's just that they didn't kind of enforce it with the elders. They just kind of mentioned it in the Watchtower that, yeah, from now on, even elders could wear beards. Then that was it. They just mentioned it. And then it was 10 years later that they finally went out and kind of said, listen, you can't discriminate. You've got to let people with beards be elders. Kind of forced it. That's something that happened recently. But the beard thing was more or less straightened out because of the meeting that I had with the elders. And then the next convention was like a few weeks later, and they had this big shing-dang there and announced that they were changing policy. It was a new truth, new light. Now you can wear beards. And the same head of AT&T got up and apologized basically and said this is something that we're not going to do anymore right there at the convention. That very day, my dad didn't even realize it. They had reinstated my dad just about, I think, the day before, and he had just cut off his beard. And so all the Jehovah's Witnesses surrounded my dad, and they thought he was a big hero and that he won, at least in that neck of the woods. But they had disfellowshipped me and my father just practically at the same time. They methodically disfellowshipped us both because I was running around telling everybody, hey, what's going on? You can't do that to my dad. And I wasn't even disfellowshipped. I wasn't even baptized, so they couldn't really disfellowship me. So they came up with a plan, I guess. I was 17. They tried to coax me, and they kept badgering me and tried to get me to get baptized. And then just after I turned 18, that's when they gave me the axe. So I think it was all premeditated. But they took me aside and said they wanted to talk to me, and they told me to meet them at the Kingdom Hall, and had some trumped up charges, and they kind of accost you. They never even told me that I was coming, that they were going to have a meeting for disfellowshipping me, to let me know about, why there was going to be a meeting. I just kind of assume when an elder walks up to you and says, be at a certain place, certain time, you just go. And I didn't know it was a meeting to disfellowship me. And I didn't know that it was a hearing with three men that were going to just do some shenanigan. My own brothers, I didn't know. So I was young. I was only 18. And they had tricked me into getting baptized just a few months before that, I guess probably so they could disfellowship me. They don't have to have a real reason. All they have to do is have a reason in their own head. If they think that you're detrimental, that you're apostate, they don't even have to have proof that you're apostate, really. They can just say, well, we think you're apostate. If you're running around saying that the beard's okay, well, then I was apostate. I wouldn't accept it. And they didn't want me talking to anybody. And that's especially when you're talking to other people about it. If you had that opinion, they might not do anything. It might not just come to that, because they wouldn't know, right? People are in that organization. They have snitches, spies, all of these things. So you can't really get away with anything. Eventually they're gonna figure something out, and they're gonna come over, and as long as they've already heard through the grapevine, they have some kind of testimony that you've done something, then they don't care whether you get a chance to prove it or disprove it or anything else. They're just coming there to find some kind of loophole or some kind of way. Like, officially they have to talk to you. They don't, though, officially have to tell you that they're trying to disfellowship you, I guess. So they started asking me a bunch of questions and stuff. And, talked to me for a few minutes, and then had me go out of the room. I came back in. They said, you were disfellowship. They really didn't tell me why or anything. So when I went back many years later and had this meeting, they brought, because I had written letters to all the congregations and explained the whole thing, what had happened, it was wrong. So they had a meeting with me in Loomis, California, and they brought this representative of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. I've never seen a man so decked out. I mean, this guy must acted like he was the president of the United States. You could tell his suit was probably $1,000 suit or something. I don't know. I don't even know how much suits cost, but it was probably one of the best suits you could get. And it was pressed, and it was, this was some kind of official, like a lawyer or something. And in the end, I got the overseer or whatever of the three to say to me, your problem is the beard. That's why you were disfellowshipped. Because I demanded an answer. And they said, if you can prove to us, like having a letter from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society saying that a beard is okay for an elder to have, that there's nothing unscriptural, about it, and you could preside over a meeting or give prayers for others. And you can act in the capacity as an elder or a pioneer or one who represents Jehovah by going from door to door and being a public, in other words, we don't believe the beards should be worn. And yeah, it's not in writing anywhere. Let's see if you can get it in writing. You can't get it in writing. And so this is why we don't disfellowship people for this. We think, well, if you've grown a beard, you must be weak. And if you're weak, they have a belief that says, well, then you must be doubting. Yeah, you're doubting the organization because of their lying, hypocritical ways. But you're not doubting the Lord. And they can't judge your heart anyway. The Bible doesn't say anything about, well, if you think your brother's doubting, disfellowshipping. But, nobody said I was doubting the Lord. But anyway, they may have surmised that I was doubting the organization. And that's what apostasy is for them. You've left their organization in your mind. That's all. That's the worst sin you could commit. You're done. You're cooked. You can't come back from that. Because if they know that is how you feel, they'll never trust you again. They have a lot of people that try to sneak back in to become spies or something, or, get something on them or whatever. They'll never trust you again. They have a rule that says that you'd have to sit in the back of the hall. If you're one of these kinds of individuals, the only way that you can ever come back in is after sitting at the back of the hall with your head down. Do not speak to anybody for 10 years. They want you to literally get down and bow to them for 10 years. And at the end of those 10 years, you've proven your loyalty, and you can come back. But I don't know that anyone's ever done it. I've never heard of anyone's ever achieved it. Because the thing of it is that if you're willing, nobody's willing to do that for 10 years. So therefore, if you are to them an apostate and you decided one day you wanted to go back, you couldn't get back. They don't forgive apostates. And all that means is, and you're not even an apostate. Like I said, you don't believe in their rules anymore. You don't believe their God anymore. You're still a Christian. In fact, more of a Christian, because now you may have got a chance to read something or talk to somebody else, and you might have found out that we're saved by the blood of Jesus. So, I loved my dad growing up so much, and my mother and my brothers and my sister, and we were never a talkity family. I mean, We were just all, Dad was just always there, worked and provided, and Mom was making food. But it wasn't like Mom and Dad ever sat me on their lap and said, I love you, and tickled me or anything. I never had a lot of love like that. I thought that life was perfect. I had mutual respect between my mother and myself, my father. I knew that if I did something wrong, he'd get a switch and whoop me. But I'll tell you what, I didn't do things that were wrong, really. I was very shy, very calm. And the only time I ever got spanked is something that I didn't do. But I never said, oh, I didn't do it, because I always felt like, well, if Dad said I did it, I didn't even think about it. I just felt, well, I probably deserve to be. I never denied anything I was ever accused of. I remember it was several big things that I came home from school one day and Dad said, did you beat that kid up? A certain kid. And when he said that, I thought, oh my. I did see that a friend of mine got beat up that day. And at school, and it was like first, second grade. I mean, we were just little kids. And I remember that I was afraid to do anything because there was about 5 other boys there and they were beating him up. No, I didn't think he was going to get killed or anything. There was teachers around there. They would have stopped it. It only went on for a minute or two. And they were kids, little children. They weren't like he wasn't bleeding or anything. They pushed him down and hit him or something. And I remember standing there and I was kind of shocked and I watched it. I didn't stop it. I didn't go over there and say, hey, or even just go over there and help him up off the ground or anything. I didn't help him. I was scared or something. I don't know. I don't think I was scared for my welfare or anything. I just was, I didn't have the courage to do anything about it. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, I was just a kid. But I guess I felt guilty about that. I mean, I felt sad and bad about that. And so when my dad said, you did it, I guess that boy's father worked with my dad. My dad was an electrician at the sawmill. And he said, your son, da, da, da. I don't know why he said that or what. But I didn't say, no, I didn't do it. Or something. I don't remember what I said, But I got a switch. Dad gave me a pocket knife, told me to go out and get a switch. And I guess I just never said anything. Because I don't remember saying no or yes. And since I didn't say anything, he spanked me, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I loved my dad, and I didn't hold any of that against him. I never saw my dad raise his voice once. I never saw him hit anybody. But, so when I grew up, and I started thinking about everything, years later, well, the whole time, I always wondered how my dad could not talk to me. And some of the things that my dad has done, I didn't understand. And I've never been able to understand it. And though I have nothing against my father in any way, like I've never seen him do hurtful things to others. He's very humble. Everybody loves him. And he never really hurt me in any way. So I ain't got nothing against him. But except that he never speaks to me. So I was praying to the Lord about that because it's hurt me. So I've tried to talk to my dad and he doesn't want to. He's just, you can tell he doesn't, he avoids me. And I don't know if he'd pick up the phone. He might, but he might have watched some of my videos now. And he probably thinks I'm really, truly an apostate. But anyway, I still have always thought, well, I don't know. I could never do that to my kid. I don't care if my kid did something bad, And also knowing that my dad knows what happened. and how I'm not guilty of any of that. Of course, then my mind says, well, yeah, but he probably thinks at this point, yeah, you've done stuff wrong because you're teaching against Jehovah. You really are apostate now, according to them. But you know, then again, I haven't been doing these videos until maybe the last 10 years. A little more than that. Well, by the way, I just checked this. I hadn't actually looked at this for a long time, but I've reached almost 113 million people. I'm sure a lot of you guys watch more than once, so it's not 113 million different people. But I've had 113 million people watch my videos. And that's just what is on there now. They've deleted many other millions in prior episodes of them getting mad at me and taking me down. So I've actually reached over 150 million people with my videos over the last 10 years. So I thought that was pretty amazing. 150 million. I had to take a double take. I thought, what is that, 150,000? No, it's 150 million people. Wow, But I guess it was just before I started doing these videos, actually. I had tried to contact him, and I don't know if I left a message or something on his phone, I think. And he called me back because I had said on the message, this is your son, David, and call me back or something. So he called me back and he said, is this Robert? I'm like, no, this is your son, David. And he's like, oh, I thought you were Robert, my other son. Because out of my three brothers, one of them stayed a witness for many years. I don't know if he is anymore or not now, but at that time he was Jehovah's Witness. But I guess he was saying, the only reason I called back, I thought it was Robert. Otherwise, I wouldn't have called you. If I didn't know it was you, I wouldn't have called back. And I was like, what? That's the only reason. So you would pick up the phone for Robert, and not for me. And then, but see, it didn't really bother me because I really didn't believe it. I think he wanted to talk to me, but he used that as an excuse. And that makes me think, well, like, he had to have a legal right to talk to me. He wanted to call back to see if I was okay or whatever, I suppose, but he felt maybe legally he couldn't do it unless he thought, oh, maybe it's my other son, So, I don't know. So that didn't bother me so much, but I only said hello and he hung up. He didn't want to talk. So, I mean, I've tried, and that was before I was ever doing videos. So it has nothing to do with my videos, although it might be that since I've been doing the videos, he's seen one of them or something and is doubly and triply sure he doesn't ever want to speak to me again, I guess. But that's the things my mind was thinking. I didn't know. I really, really wondered about it. And whenever I have something I really need to know, I'll ask the Lord. When I figure, one day I'll just realize, okay, why don't I just ask the Lord? So the other day I was just talking to the Lord about my dad and asking him, why, and I don't understand because I didn't have an explanation. It's kind of bleeds into, why does anyone do bad things? If these are all your children and they do such evil things, how can they, why would they do it? And not how could they be forgiven? That wasn't my problem. My problem is, why would any people, all these of your children must have love somewhere inside of them, and they're sincere. I thought my dad was a good person. But why could people do these things that I could not do? I know that if my mother hadn't heard from me for a few months or something, she would have gone completely crazy with worry. My mother loved me. I know what love is. And so I don't understand how a father would not want to call their son once in a while. So I just didn't understand. I've had a lot of bad nightmares and stuff about it. And it was very difficult. So I had a vision. The Lord took me to a particular place that night that he takes me to regularly. I guess in the last few months or something, or a year or so, I've been having these visions where the Lord takes me to this place just before or during the tribulation. It's during the tribulation. And it's a big city where I'm going all the time. I'm going to this big city. I don't recognize the city specifically, but it is much like pretty much any city that you might have been in. You can tell there's a big area, downtown. I mean, I think this city's like over 1 million people because I'm picturing it had a big downtown with high rises. And there's an area there where there's a big building, maybe 10, 20 stories. And it's all glass and it has all these shops and stuff. And there's other big buildings around, but there's this big like boulevard that goes down, and it's kind of up on a hill, and it goes down the hill, and you can see for miles all the lights of the city lights and stuff. And this was kind of like just as you're going into the high rise area, and I was looking out towards and I am always there, right? And then down into the suburbs, and I'm always running around this place and the Lord's showing me what's happening. There is something very bad going on. I mean, they're rounding people up, is what I see. There's sights in the sky like UFOs, but they're made by United States. They're made by the Bavarians. They're not off-worldly. They're human technology. They're rounding people up. They're taking them away somewhere. And everybody you see there is running in panic. There isn't too many people left. Usually, I'm seeing a scene where everybody's kind of scattered and gone, and there's a few people still beep beep honking, trying to get out of there, and what is left, it looks like rioters, and like you wouldn't want to get caught in the street because they could grab you. Not only if it might be the government grabbing you, or it could be some thief or robber or rapist. It's just anarchy everywhere. And I'm not scared. Most everybody else is scared. They're running and they don't know what to do. They're panicking. And I know absolutely what to do. I'm getting out of the city. I'm trying to get out. And I'm hiding behind buildings. I don't want anybody to see me. I mean, I've been to this place several times. And it's always the same scene, but different things happen. One time when I was there were these coffins that were coming down, like from the sky, like almost floating. And people were being rounded up, put in the coffins. And I remember hiding and going around somebody's house, in the back of the house, to try and stay out of sight. And other times I see motherships hovering over us, and they're rounding up people. It's almost like a fake rapture. But in this vision, I knew that they were taking people away and grabbing people. And I could see there was a lot of danger. And I darted into some abandoned house. And I remember thinking, okay, these people are gone. The world's a mess. There's only one way to survive, and you're going to have to get out of the city. But you're going to need supplies. You might look around in this house to see if they have anything that might help you, a match or a lighter or an axe or anything you might need to take with you. And so I was looking around, and I think I found a lighter or something. And anyway, I was going out the back door, and there was a bunch of people in the street, and they saw me. And I don't know why, but they saw me, and they seemed like good people, like they were just trying to get out of there. Maybe I was worried about them, or they were trying to get, and I was trying to tell them that the only way is to get into the woods. Don't go downtown. Don't try to, survive by hunkering down in some house or whatever. That the only way to survive is to get out, and we had to go into the woods. Well, they weren't listening, but there was a couple of people that I thought I could convince, and I was following them, and it was really foolish because they was going downtown, and things got bad, and riots were, you could hear gunfire and stuff. So we ducked down. There was a door, it was open, and it looked like it led down underneath the building. And so we went through there. It was an underground level under the city. At least, I don't know if it was the whole city, but I mean, it was like an underground part of this building that was standing there. So we went down under it. Down below, everything seemed to be different. There was a restaurant there, and there were still people in there eating, people walking around. There wasn't much panic going on. And it was like these people were underground, and they weren't afraid because they thought that since they were underground, then whatever's going on top up there in the real world wouldn't hurt them, and that they wouldn't have any problems. Now, they may have been a little bit fearful, maybe had some anxiety, maybe that's the only solution they had, because a lot of people just can't go into the woods. They couldn't survive. So since they were there in the city, it was like they just went underground and just kept on keeping on. Maybe they had security or whatever, but they seemed not to be too afraid. And I'm peeking into doors, and I'm looking around, and there's this little restaurant, cafe type thing. I don't even know if I'd call it a cafe. Maybe it's a sandwich shop, but it was it served food there of some kind. Probably burgers and stuff and fries. But I noticed that I remember seeing Coke machines and chip machines and stuff like that, and there was a little cafeteria or something. So it was like a little cafe underground. And I looked up, and it was my dad running the place. The angel was explaining to me in my mind that everybody loved him. He wasn't making a lot of money or anything. He wasn't really doing it for that. He was down there providing cheap meals. He had a lot of people would just come in. He would just give them food. He wouldn't even charge them, because there was a lot going on, and the people that were coming from above that were panicked and scared and would come down there and feel like they were safe. And Dad was feeding them all. He was feeding them. And it was weird because I hadn't seen my dad in a long time. I was standing there, and I looked up, and I saw him behind the counter. And he looked up and saw me. And I saw that kind of twinkle in his eye, like the old days. And I didn't get the feeling he didn't love me. I still had the feeling that he loved me. But he was busy. He was busy helping the people underground. That's all he knew. He didn't know about or have the idea, like I had, to get out in the woods, because I knew that everything was going to be destroyed, including the basement eventually. If they didn't know that he was down there and everything was calm at the moment, I knew in my heart that wasn't the place to go. But I also knew that he was not aware of any other way. And he had some strange faith that even if he was in danger, he was going to stay down there and keep feeding people. And the Lord told me that everybody is doing the best they can. That my dad really does have love. But in his mind, he believes that the world is going to be destroyed because of sin and evil and not knowing Jehovah and doing the things that he was taught. And so because he believes that, he's trying to be faithful. He knows that a lot of people in his own organization are wrong. He knows that it's not perfect, but he still believes in that way of living and that belief system. He doesn't know any other way, and he has a lot of family. His sister, a couple of sisters, his brother, all his nephews, nieces, and cousins, and everybody. And he'd lived that area for years where he's at now. And they all look up to him. And he goes around and gives public talks all around the area around there. And the angel told me that if it weren't for my dad and others like my dad in organizations like that who do have a sincere heart, and regardless of the fact that they're in a false scenario, they're in ignorance, that they don't have that enlightenment that could be had. They're not aware of it. They don't know about the freedom you can have in Christ. They don't know about the grand truths that you and I are learning. It's not important. They do have faith. But this is all they know to do. The Titanic might be sinking, but they don't know how to swim. And they don't have a raft. So they stay on the ship until it sinks and help everybody and tell them stories as the ship goes down. Because they don't know any other way. And so in some ways they're heroes. But I think what the Lord showed me is that the job that we have here on earth is given to us before we ever come into this world. Now, this is where people really misunderstand what free will is. And because, like, if you have free will, then that means you can do whatever you want, right? But if you are also controlled by your emotions and controlled by lust and anger, and you're quick to lose your temper, then you're not really controlling anything, because you didn't choose to lose your temper. What happened is that you aren't very strong. You're in there. Your decision making is in there. Your will is intact. But there is this false personality. There is this other person your alter ego, that is much more powerful than you. And that's the devil. You're actually more powerful than the devil, but you have to exercise your power. And if you're deceived and you don't know about that part of yourself, if you're not strong enough to let yourself let go of fear, if you're not strong enough with your love, if your knowing is not enough, if you're not aware that you're invincible, then you'll be deceived by the monster that you're creating and become you yourself is not attached to your alter ego, which is making all these monsters, this fear. You separated your mind and its psyche. You've got a duality going there, and you're playing games with yourself. Part of yourself is leading yourself into the ditch. The fool in the deck of cards going around and around. He's ruled over by the archons and the principalities, the powers, and the dominions, and he has absolutely no free will. He's led along by his nose hairs. The demons can control you. They can make you do whatever you want, whatever they want. That's almost possession. And most people in this world are possessed. They have many demons. Now, when you see somebody that's crazy, they're taking baseball bats and breaking out windows and having violent temper tantrums. They've got to be locked up in a straitjacket and they're murdering people. Those people are what I would say fully and completely possessed of Satan. That's what it is. It's not a medical disease. They don't have control over their faculties. They've given it up to bursts of anger, hate, jealousy, and anxiety has overwhelmed them. Depression. We sympathize with people that have depression in this world, and we say, oh, poor thing, it's not your fault. And what we should be saying is, it isn't your fault. You're a divine being. You have authority over the devil, and this is how you deal with the devil. You kick him out. That's not you. You need to explain to people that they're not guilty. It's this alter ego that's guilty. We all had an alter ego, and you may, for whatever reason, if your level of maturity is not enough that you can gain control in this life of your animalistic behavior. Everybody has these 12 deities reigning inside of them. And we've all gone through the gates, and the world that we live in is what it is, but it's not evil. It only acts evil. The same reason that the lion is supposed to eat straw like the bull, but it doesn't. It's wicked. Not really, right? The lion is a child of the Lord, just like, everything. But this nature that has control of the lion, this ravenous beast, is something that can be taken away. This is what happens when humans take animals from the wild and domesticate them. The way that you tame a wild beast is you put a bit in its mouth and you ride it. So Yahweh was represented as the donkey, and Jesus rode into Jerusalem with a bit in a donkey's mouth. He had control of his body, he had control of his thoughts, and he had become king. That's what it means to become a king and have dominion. Adam and Eve was told, have dominion over the fish of the sea, the birds of heaven, and the animals of the world. So it's funny because, and I'm not blaming Jehovah's Witnesses for not knowing this, but it's ironic because they teach that only 144,000 are going to go to heaven, and they're going to reign over the rest of the world. They're going to be the rulers. They're going to be God, But the truth is that the highest person in the universe, our Lord Jesus, said we're his friends and he's not our master. He set us free. And he said, if you want to be the ruler, you got to be the servant. Because Jesus was the servant of all. So what does it mean we're going to have dominion, get a crown? Well, Adam was given dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of heaven and the mammals. And literally that's true. Everything's literally and spiritual in the Bible. Literally, Adam had control, Adam and Eve both, had dominion over the animals. Meaning they, as long as they were pure in their heart and mind and did things out of love, even the animals ate straw, like the bull. And the lamb lay down with the wolf. And they did no harm. Because Adam and Eve were one. This is before sin entered into the world. The higher consciousness was leading and guiding the conscious mind in perfect unity and harmony. But, so there is not going to be anybody in the future that's reigning over the others. And in fact, even though the 144,000 is 12,000 from each of the tribes, because eventually all the tribes are going to, one by one, rise on the horizon and be exalted. But Adam and Eve already had dominion. They were given dominion over the fish and the birds and the mammals. Over all of creation. They already had dominion. And it means that they were in the light. They had light bodies. And they had control over their nature and their environment. And so really to take control, one has to, there's all kinds of methods. People say positive thinking and visualization. And how do you get or conquer or get your crown? Sit in a meditative position, bang your head up against the wall saying for all your life and never eat and never go anywhere and sit, in a yoga position. Sound cymbals and light candles and just read books all your life or something. Well, it turns out that what we're trying to do is defeat the armies of Satan, the lies. And the lies are the animal lower vengeance nature, the carnivorous, vicious lower ego. And all one has to do, if you really want to make progress, is resist the devil and he will flee from you. Don't give in and yell when you're mad. Don't get in and have sex when it's not a moral thing to do. Don't give in to your fear. Don't give in to your selfishness. If you can conquer all of these kinds of things, you become perfect. You've overcome these 12 natures. And you've tamed the natures. And now they're lying down with the wolf and eating straw like the bull. So having dominion is having dominion over the demons, over ourselves, over this lower ego. It's not about ruling over other people. When the man takes dominion, then the fish of the sea and the birds and the mammals don't eat each other. That nature is carnivorous because we're all learning. We go through advancements from the fish, the birds, the mammals to men. And we're overcoming. And when you get to be a man, you're still overcoming. You have many reincarnations until you have your final test where you get a crown, which is the opening of the chakras. You have 7 chakras. The Bible talks about in Revelation with a candlestick. And there are 7 flames. And at Pentecost, they got the flame that was split in twain. In other words, a twin flame. And New Age people talk about this. The twin flame means that your lower nature is wedded and submitted itself to the spiritual nature. And they're walking hand in hand and in unison. And then you've tamed those animals and you have conquered them. That nature that we considered evil, it never was evil. The instinctual nature. And that's why the serpent was the wisest of all the creatures the Lord had made. See, that serpent had wings. But when he was cursed by the law, he was cursed to slither on the ground without legs, without wings. And the nature then of this world, the beasts, the serpents, the bugs, and these are the diseases. They cause disease. They cause death. And they eat one another. And they murder one another. And this is the law of Moses, where you sacrifice animals and get a temporary life from that animal, eating his flesh. And he's clothing you with his skin, and you enter into these animal bodies and partake of this physical, temporary world of chaos, learning a world of duality, learning good from evil, where the male and the female have been separated and become two. You've got to marry them back. And our children, Cain and Abel, the flesh and the spirit, have got to be brought back into harmony again as well. And this is going to be the restoration of paradise. Paradise doesn't have to, we don't have to go anywhere. Paradise is in the mind, that's the third heaven. And the lowest place is the physical, the ground. So we say the earth represents the conscious realm. And the air, because we're going to meet him in the air, represents the higher consciousness. So we have several layers. We have subtle bodies. You always have to live in a body. But if you are in some kind of blindness, then you cannot live in your natural light body, but you're cast out of the light because your mind is now veiled through ignorance. Ignorance veils the mind. Deception veils the mind. And deception is caused by the liar. And the liar is the one who made that law covenant. And he's the murderer because of him and his lie, you surely shall not partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because then you'll become like God, knowing good and evil. And casting us out of the garden so that we could not partake of the tree of life. Jesus said, I would have given you, woman, if you'd just asked me, I would have given you the eternal waters. Because that's not all that was in that garden. It wasn't just a beautiful paradise where you could eat fruit that would give you eternal life. But it was also living waters that would be bubbling up from your innermost being. Because that's where it is, within you. The source of life is within you, and it bubbles up from your innermost being. And this temple is the temple of the living deity, and you are the Elohim. So, everything that's in the universe is represented in the circle. So, everything. All of our experiences. And if you've noticed, if you put a circle in front of you and you divide it up into 12 houses, and if you put on your left side of, if the circle's facing you and you're looking at the circle, the left side, which would be the western side, is where you would put spring. And that would be Aries. And then you have Taurus, and then Gemini, and then Cancer, and then Leo, and then Virgo, and then Libra. Okay, so Virgo is the last sign at the top of the wheel, on the top of the arc, from Aries to Virgo. Virgo is our divine mother who's giving birth to the divine son who goes down through the judgment, which is Libra, the two balances, And we go down through the judgment, and then Scorpio is the age of fire. And everybody has to go through that age of fire. But what that age of fire does is burn up all that is the dross, and what comes out of there is the pure silver gold, nothing else, which is the precious part, your spirit and your soul. But what is burned up is all of the outer carnal nature. And then if you keep going, you'll get to a pinnacle, which is the mountain of Sinai. And from there, you notice that there's a lot of water. You notice that the beast starts there because Capricorn is a goat with two horns with a dolphin body. Some people think it looks like a fish, but it's a dolphin. It's a mammal. And from that point forward, because it's got the two horns, it's a goat, it's going up. And you're going up the mountain because Moses, who gave us the law, and I will not pardon your sins unto the third and fourth generation, because that is the symbolism, the 3 times repetitiously means till it's finished. You're going to not be forgiven. You're going to pay for what you're going to do until you paid for it. Nobody else pays for your sins. That's not your children paying for your sins. That's your own generation or birth. So for 3 births, or 4, meaning until you've paid everything. And so the top of Mount Sinai is at the bottom of the wheel. That's the birth of Saturnalius. That's the birth of Set. Now, as we've covered many times, this Set is the Greek Saturn, and this is the Hebrew Cham. We have the sons of Noah, or Anu, or John, January, is Shem and Japheth and Cham. And Cham castrated his father Uranus, or Anu, or Noah, and that is Ham, who stole the birthright. And then it ended up with Nimrod. And then Esau killed Nimrod and gave it to Jacob, or Jacob bought it for a bowl of red soup. But the story plays out around the entire wheel. So if you go back further, you go back to Adam and Eve. This is in the days before Atlantis, before it fell. Atlantis was a circle, according to Plato. It was the astrological wheel. It was more or less a paradisical time or period. And there were ages before it. And so Atlantis is a mythical time of spiritual bliss. And yet it was a time historical upon the earth. And it was actually, the Garden of Eden was actually in California, as we talked about the other day. But at the time of the flood, or the time of Capricorn, we went down through the waters and began to transmigrate and reincarnate until we became man and got our crown and our white robe. And now we're going to graduate and rise up on the horizon. So we're the morning stars, the stars of the day. So back in the day with Cain and Abel, when they were born on the earth, they have a story that is an esoteric one. Because Abel, which represents our spiritual side, he was murdered. He was murdered by the conscious Cain, the earthly man, the beast man. And so therefore there was a punishment put upon him, which is put upon all of us, because we're all mortal, that we will be punished 7 times. It's a cycle until we come out of the cycle. And then 7 generations later, Lamech had his firstborn child, Naamah, which was a woman. And she was no longer under that 7 times or that curse. But Lamech, so she was free. So she married Noah. And she was able then to redeem all of us. We're redeemed through that woman. However, that wasn't the end of all of the sin, because Lamech murdered someone then and said, if Cain shall be punished 7 times, then I will be punished 70 times 7. So that then started the position that we're in today, the degradation, the bestial qualities in nature. Their children began to rule our children, and our lower ego, our murderous selves. And until the 70 times 7, which would be the Grand Jubilee or the Great Sabbath, which is the last 1,000 years that we're about to go into, when everybody will be made free. But until then, we're going to be in this bondage. And it's likened in Daniel chapter 2 to a great tree that was growing and was very large. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And under its branches, all the beasts of the field, the carnivores, took refuge. It was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's why they're carnivores. That's why they're under the branches and taking refuge in the law, in the vengeance, in the round and around, the catch-22, the temporary life, the illusion, the around the merry-go-round. Yeah, Mary goes round just looking for her little lamb, whose fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, the little lamb was sure to go. But one day, she brought her lamb to school, to the education of this world. But the school said, you can't bring your little lamb to school. You can't teach the truth in the schools or in the public forums, because it's a mystery and everybody's got to figure it out on their own. So the bottom of the wheel then has 12. There's 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night. And so there are 6 males and 6 females, just as there were 6 titans and 6 female titans. And notice they were thrown into Tartarus because they were the ones on the top of the wheel. They weren't necessarily evil. It was simply the rulers of the darkness. And that's all they were. And it was the line of Cain. Well, one day Zeus had a battle with the carnal nature, tried to overcome it with wisdom, with love, and he conquered these rulers of the darkness, and the wheel spun, turned, and the sun rose, and now we have 6 days of summer, which is your Aries all the way to the Virgo. And up there is where all the eternal beings are. It's the eternal realm of day, because once you reach the top, you don't come back around to night again. Because when you're looking at this wheel, you're not realizing that's just one-dimensional. You're not realizing it's 3-dimensional and it really is a figure 8 or a spiral like the DNA, and you're moving up and you're advancing. So the dispensations that we've been living in, we only go through it once. But when we're at the bottom of the wheel, we were mineral, silver and gold, and then we went out into the sea, became little pollywogs and fishes. And we began to fly in the air because he sent out the dove, remember Noah. Noah is the Jonas in the whale, the beast, right? Noah got in the boat and went through the floods. We're going to go through the floods. Well, once we get into the boat, which is the bati, the boat, this body that's anointed with pitch, it's destined to survive. And all the animals got in the boat to preserve them alive. Well, they're in their carnal nature. They had to go into the boat, which is anointed by the king, which is Noah, January, the baptizer, John the baptizer. And while they were in the boat, they sent out the doves and the ravens. There's good and evil. And they both came back, you see, because when we consult the Urim and the Thummim, guess what we're consulting? Lots of people have tried to figure out what this oracle was that the Lord gave them. And if it's an oracle and it's on your vest, what does it light up? The colors of 12 stones and all the Urim and Thummim. What is it? What does it have to do with lots? And what you got games, the Wheel of Fortune, and games that have a little spinning wheel, and you throw dice, and there's 6 dots on each side. It's like 6, 6. There's 6 on the top and 6 on the. This is all very related. The roulette. What does it land? Your Wheel of Fortune. Well, the Urim means lights. It's plural. The lights. It really means the stars. Yeah. And the Thummim, means the darkness. They were always consulting the light and the darkness, because all the stars or the lights are in the black, dark night sky. Really what they were doing is consulting astrology. All the stars, remember we talked about the Elohim are the morning stars. Why are they called the morning stars? Well, in other places it's the day stars, the ones that rise on the horizon, and the sun is the leader of them. But when you see the springtime horizon is Orion, and that's that Aryan race that we all are. We're all moving into the daytime eternal heavens. And the night sky represents the past, because we're morning stars. We're the stars that graduated into the light, become one with the sun. It all blends in together. All the light becomes one. But if you consult the stars, why would you do that? Because those places in the heavens are a clock that represents because they rotate, they're for signs and for seasons, and we can determine the times and the seasons from them. Just like when the sun comes up, it's another day. And the moon, controls the months. Well, the stars control the aeons. And the story, the record that is left in the stars is the crude, simplistic parable story. But in reality, the stars are the 12 tribes, and each of us are from some point there in the 12 tribes. Now, there are tribes that are going through they're going to have different blessings. Jacob's going to bless them and give them each a different blessing. Why is it only one child gets the blessing of the dew of heaven and all these wonderful glories? Because that's the firstborn. And that one then will be the firstborn into the promised land and receive all the blessings ahead of the time. And they will have a bigger responsibility. They'll have to organize and plan and plant and be the fathers to the other children who are born later from each of these other tribes. So if you're under the influence of these deities, these natures that we all were controlled by in the past, as we're reincarnated and transmigrated, and advanced from the fish, the birds, the mammals to men, and then got our crowns and our robes and our glory. That group that gets the glory and the crown is the firstborn. The other children are still coming, and they're going to benefit from their elder brother going before them. There is the first and then there is the last. So people who do not or are not aware of the Christ, which is the firstborn, which goes into the promised land, which is in the day, right, has advanced to the place where it's gone around the bottom and went through all of the the schoolmaster that led to Christ and rose on the third day and was glorified and exalted. They're not special. Yes, they're the elect from before the founding of the world. But that's because they were the brethren, Christ's brethren, who stood there, the morning stars, the firstborn, the ones who would rise first on the horizon. They were all there together with Jesus and clapped their hands for joy at the founding of the world. And that's why he looked at his disciples and said, Yir Elohim. So the others are going to come up out of the, because death and hell shall be opened. And the keys will open them. Jesus got the key and opened it. And he was the firstborn. And as the tribes that were at the bottom of the wheel, the 12 tribes that were migrating through all these animal bodies and going through from glory unto glory and learning by the things in which they suffer, they're all going to one by one file up. And during the 1,000 years to come, those who are of the preceding age will now move in to the glory. And there'll be a great multitude, which no man could number, coming up out of this bottomless hole at the bottom of the wheel. And also the devil who had been reigning in the heavens, because it says that Satan was before the Lord's throne accusing us day and night. Well, he'll be thrown down. The moment Satan is thrown down is the moment that we are exalted. Because on one side of the wheel, we arise over the horizon. And on that very moment, at the other side of the wheel, Satan, the king of this world, is thrown down. And so this is why when Jesus died on the cross, just before he died that night, they got around the table to have the Last Supper, and he said, one of you will betray me. And of course, that's the flesh that betrays the spirit. Out of the 12 tribes, there's one tribe that has been destined, the last. And in fact, Joseph was the firstborn of his favorite wife, Rachel. The firstborn got the birthright. But the child of Jacob called Judah, he was born of Leah, which is the other covenant. And he wasn't the firstborn. Reuben was the firstborn. And then I think Simeon, I think he was like pretty much the last born. And so his lot, that's why you cast lots to see your portion, to get your portion. His lot, what fell upon him, because he is the youngest, was that he was the one who was ignorant and blind. And at the moment that we're going through the Enlightenment, they're falling into this place of darkness. They're trailing behind. So Judas, or the Latinized way of saying Judah, of the 12 there, said, "Is it me, Lord?" And Jesus said, whoever dips his bread in the bitter herb sauce, that will be the one. And now the bitter herbs, they're eating unleavened bread because they're suffering. They're leaving. It was the Passover and they had to leave Egypt. And they had these bitter herbs that they had to eat, which represented death. And so Jesus was saying, I'm going to die and I'm going to dip my body, my bread, into this bitterness. Now, there's a couple of ways you could take that. It was accidental. It was because he just accidentally was born last. Or his position of being last was a destiny that he chose, or that the lot fell upon him. Because you would think if Jesus said whoever dips his bread in the bitter herbs is the one that's going to betray me, you wouldn't think that any of them would have, give me some bread, dip it in there, I'll do it, I'll betray you. I mean, maybe he was too ignorant to understand what Jesus said, but I think he literally chose to be that one. Jesus is saying, Because they were all saying, "Is it me, Lord?" Peter says, "Is it me?" And they're all like, "Is it me? Is it me? You want me to go? I'll do it. Whatever you want, Lord." And Jesus said, "Well, I'm going to dip my bread in this bitter herbs. I'm going to die. The one who betrays me, you choose. Whoever wants to dip their bread in, whoever gets it first. It's a blessing, or it's some kind of an honor to play this part. The deceiver, the tempter. It looks, for all practical purposes, that the Lord's teaching us something here. That the one for whom it was prepared, this fire, was prepared from the founding of the world, was the devil and his demons, the devil and his angels. Well, who are they? The Lord never made devils and demons. The Lord only made humans. It doesn't say that the Lord made angels. Because remember, angels have white robes and wings, meaning that they passed the class. They've got their white robes. They've got immortality. They had to have been humans first. So where did the demons come from? Well, they had to have been, just as angels are exalted humans, demons are humans that have gone on the downward path. They chose to do that. But this story indicates that it would be a tough assignment. And out of humility, Judas chose this lot. Anyway, he ends up going out and being hung upside down. So that is the other side of the wheel. That represents the Antichrist and what he's about to do. But the Bible says that he was hung upside down and he went unto his own place. So the Bible says that the lake of fire was prepared for the devil and his demons. You see, that's the age of Scorpio, or the scorpion area, or the serpent area. There's a constellation called Serpent in the Scorpio constellation. So it's the constellation of serpents and scorpions, and we'll trample upon them. And so that's their destiny. They're the children of the devil, and it is this one particular destiny that was put upon certain individuals that are not yet advanced, haven't gone through the hells and been perfected. Christ had gone through all of it, learned by the things in which he suffered, learned obedience by the things he suffered, and was favorably heard with his prayers, with great tears and mourning. He was favorably heard by the one who was able to save him out of death. So Jesus, we're going to be like him, because we're going to be transformed from glory into glory, even if it was done by the Lord. And in the resurrection to eternal life, there'll be the glory of the sun, the moon, and that of the stars, which each star differeth in star and glory. Glory will have eternal progression. But that eternal progression is for the firstborn. And the firstborn is redeemed, and therefore the inheritance is received, and the rest of the family receive an inheritance. The lastborn, or those who are the babies, they need an inheritance. And they're going to be provided for too. But they're younger and they got to wait till they're grown up. So before we are exalted and get our crown, we have to go down through the judgment of Libra and into the bitumen and the age of fire, which is prepared for the devil and his demons, which is that old past self that's been reigning over this particular world, because we've still been in winter. We haven't yet seen the spring equinox, that will shift the weather, and the sunlight will come out, and all the snow and all the wickedness will go away. And so everybody has a place. There's a time for life and a time for death, a time to be happy and a time to be sad. And the world that we live in was made this way. There is the original paradise that was made by us, actually, the Elohim, with our Father and Mother, our Divine Mother that presided, and we manifested this beautiful world in the infinite past. But at some point, we all filed down. Even Adam went down in through this initiation. He followed Eve, his wife, who initiated us all, and partook of the knowledge of good and evil. And the animals then began to eat each other, and we began to be carnivores, and we began to have these many lives, learning and to purge out all the dross until we graduate and overcome each of these houses and rise on the horizon. And then we go up the mountain, and we're going to the top of the summer solstice, where we'll get crowned with everlasting eternal glory and go to because at that point we have to spiral around into sort of right through the wormhole of the North Pole and go into a whole new world. We'll, just like in the past we put off this old body and we're reincarnated to a new body, well, we're going to put off this old world and go to literally live on another world, because it will be in another time dimension. We'll have advanced and changed in a moment. Things happen that way. Light is suddenly there when the sun rises, and then when it goes down, it's kind of a sudden thing, and all of a sudden within a few minutes it's dark. And our world changes. We experience different levels. So really, the Lord has shown me that my father is a good person, and the Lord has called him to go into the field and down into the basement and be a light to those that are perishing. And what he's teaching them isn't all the wonderful enlightenment that we're learning, but what's appropriate for those who are at that stage of the game. And I guess what they learned from my father isn't so much the right math or figures or esoteric truths to fly to another realm, but to love one another, to be calm, because they're afraid. They're like cattle that's being rounded up in pens, and the Lord loves them, and he needs workers there too. Now, that's not a goal that we should have. We should want to lead the people out, but there are some who it was their destiny. They're not ready to receive the plan where they would come here and be light teachers for those who were escaping. They're like Moses, who didn't teach the gospel, but he taught a system that was used by the ranchers and farmers to go into the wild and get these wild animals, these wild brute beasts, these carnivorous natures of humans that aren't advanced and haven't gotten their crowns or their glory, and round them up in a pen, teach them, with some sort of regiment, some classroom, maybe a couple of rulers over the knuckles. And in that classroom, you also need to have the light of Christ shine. They have to be able to see the truth, even if the words that they're reading, what was written to them, was vengeance and the law and an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But yet, if you look through the words, behind the veil, you will see the light of Christ. And that's why Jesus told them on the road to Heliopolis, Emmaus, after the resurrection, that all the scriptures, you can read them, and they all speak about me, the Christ. And that's the true meaning of Scripture, the esoteric spiritual meaning. But for those who have eyes to see, you can't expect people who are not capable of understanding that kind of love and that kind of peace, because their instinctual nature is so wrapped around them at this point. They haven't learned the things that's necessary to have that courage and that integrity and that conviction, and to get that, and to have that gnosis, because they haven't had enough experience. But yet they are still full of hope, and their light is still shining even in the darkness. And so this is why the Bible says that if you will go to heaven, I would lead you. If you were somewhere in the wilderness, my hand would guide you. And even if you were in hell, I'd be there. The Lord will always be there wherever we are, because He will never leave us, because He loves everybody. So, friends, that's what the stones and the Urim and Thummim and all of that is. You can't really get information from a rock. The rock had the 12 stones and was a device to calculate astrology. And they also used other devices. Sometimes they would use your palm and other things. They would use the liver. But you're basically using astrology. That's the oracle. And true astrology is not quite like modern, hoaxy, fake astrology. It is an art that once it is brought back to the earth, I mean, it's gone from the earth. There's no one on this earth knows the true astrology, because we don't even have the original language. It's got to be restored to us. And that's why at the Tower of Babel, there were 72 nations that were scattered out from there. And that really represents all of the children on the wheel around from top to bottom. They were in the center within, and then they were cast out of paradise, where they had access to the center, or the living waters and the tree of life. And they were cast out into Eretz, which is outside of the garden and the animals that live forever, that partake and eat from the tree of life. They didn't have access to that anymore. And they were thrown down, out and down. The wheel turned. And the cherubim, which have the 4 faces, the fixed astrological signs, they're the ones that now, those 12 astrological signs that we're going to go around in during the night and advance through the animalistic natures and overcome them and be ruled over by these forces, these demons, until we overcome these demons and cast them out and rise on the horizon into the eternal paradise, where the animals that are on the top of the wheel eat straw like the bull, and the little Christ child, the newly born Christ child from the Virgin Mother, will sit in the hole of the cobra, meaning we will go inside the flesh, but the serpent will do no harm. Why? Why is there a serpent still? Because remember, the serpent was cursed. This body, this world was cursed. The animal natures were cursed to eat flesh. They were cast out of the garden, and they had no more tree of life. They were dying, and they ate each other, and they were put under law and under the curse. and they had to meet certain requirements and go through vengeance for 7 times. And then they're redeemed. And so that Christ child will sit in the hole of the cobra, and that serpent will do no harm, or the carnal flesh, in all my holy mountain. And that's the mountain that rises from where the beast rises on the sands of the sea in Aries. And the mountain begins, and you climb to the top of the summit of Mount Zion. And that's going to be thousands of years from now. We're going to be living in this upward progression unto Mount Zion, and it will blossom as the rose, and we'll have more and more glories to follow. Eternal progression. Anyway, guys, I better go. It's well over an hour, and I think I'm going to sit here and have a cup of coffee again and get this loaded, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. May the Lord bless you. Have a good one.